Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Let's do that thing that we do. Talk about your psychology, what is going on in your mind, the totality that is your psyche, not only your consciousness or your ego consciousness, but what is going on in your unconscious. The thing that is ultimately in control, but we are in control of our unconscious to some degree, so let's figure out how to get at it. Let's say, there's a deep, thick forest there. Are you going to be more likely to explore the forest if you go to the therapist and they say, well, there's a bunch of irrational things going on there. Just convince yourself it doesn't matter. Focus on this thing outside of the woods and, busy yourself with that. Whatever's going on in the unconscious, that's unscientific, that's irrational. Does that help? Or does it help to say, so you go to a psychoanalytic therapist and they say, yeah, the forest is there, it matters. We can explore the forest to some degree, but we can't really make sense out of it. But I think there is a better way that integrates both parts. Let's go into the forest, but here's a map to do it. I think you're going to be more likely to explore the forest, more likely to get everything that you need out of the forest, out of that which is ultimately in control. Your complexes, your archetypes, your emotions, your latent emotions that you have not managed, perhaps latent memories that you haven't even looked at. More likely to get all the nougat of wisdom that we can out of it when there's a map and we say, well, here's what's going on. Here's a potentially dangerous point. Gotta go there, but be careful. And once you do go there, here's how you talk through those issues once we are there. And I think it's just easier, and you're gonna be more. It's not that you're more courageous. It's just, okay, here's how we do it. Here's how we create a map of the unconscious, or here's how we explore the unconscious, because here's a map, right? And I think that's what I want to help you with here. And I think one of these archetypal ways of functioning is initiation. If I talked about initiation before, I feel a lot better. You read Jung or anybody else, and any one of these people who we would consider to be a great thinker, or some people would, and we think, man, all you do is repeat yourself. Sometimes I feel like I come on here or on my blog, I don't really post there anymore. There's a reason for that, and I will announce that at some point. Any content that I produce, anything that I say, any of my ideas, I repeat myself. But I think that's okay. I think that's what I need to do, because we are all stuck in this thing called our psychology, and the more I can clarify it in a bunch of different ways, maybe one podcast, it's not something I'm saying doesn't really land well. Maybe perhaps I ramble too much. That could happen at times. But sometimes I will say something and it'll just hit and strike you in a certain way and maybe help a little bit. Although ultimately, what you need to do to help yourself is either go to therapy, I suggest with me, or not with me, to at least go and talk to somebody you can talk to in an open, confidential way. Probably listening to this, it may help to some degree, but this is not a replacement for doing the work that you need to do on yourself. I think that goes without saying. So yeah, something that I've been thinking about, pretty much forever, since I was maybe 19, but a lot these past couple months, is the concept of initiation. I think it's because when my kid was born, I thought, boy, this is an initiatory experience. Not for me so much. Yeah, for me to some degree. I think there's some generativity. I'm going on from the relationship stage onto the generativity stage now. Not that I don't have to work on the other stages, right? Separation from parents, work, friends, sexual initiation, relationship, emotional, anima initiation, integration, what we discussed on the video this past week. Now I'm heading over into generativity, but I was there for the birth of my kid about a month ago now, a little bit more than a month ago. And I thought, wow, this is initiation. And it's interesting because, you read Jung and Symbols of Transformation and Eric Neumann, the Origins and History of Consciousness, like we have over there. And there's all these birth, rebirth metaphors, womb, mother kind of metaphors. And it all makes sense. Of course, you would choose these symbols as symbols of transformation, as symbols of transformation of what we need to go through to go into our next stage of adult development, to go from separation from the parents to being alone. Right? How do I cultivate that feeling when I'm alone? that I did have when I was 5 and with my parents. Well, I got to become my own father. I need to become my own mother. Well, how do I do that? I mean, I need to internalize these two psychologically nutritional mechanisms in my own psyche. Managing anger for the mother and managing anxiety for the father, I would argue. And that is, so there's all these, birth and rebirth symbolisms in there. You're reading it and it's like, yeah, this makes sense. But then you have a kid and you actually see a kid burst forth from a woman's loins, and you just have a completely different it's not a different perspective. That's not what it is. But you just have a deeper appreciation for how a child being born is a great symbolism for initiation. I mean, it is initiation. It's something that we all see. It's an experience. By the way, I didn't want to be there for it initially. I just thought it was kind of lame. Like, what, am I going to go to your Tupperware party with you too? I know, I'm sounding like a bad father, and I probably am to some degree, but originally I was like, how would I go? Don't I have stuff to do? Don't I have a podcast to record so 3 people can listen to it? Like, come on, I'm a busy guy, right? But then I did want to go. I think that was like an old world way of thinking. Like 1910s, I'm a coal miner and I have to go to work. Otherwise, I can't get paid unless I go to work. I mean, thankfully, I have this kind of job in this life now where I can take a week off if I want. It's no big deal. I have to send a few emails. It's fine. It's privileged. You can criticize me. That's just your privileged interpretation that you can, in a sense, take a week off for if your child's being born. And to that, I would say, yeah, it is. I am privileged. Why don't you join me in my privilege? It's great. There's a lot of it to go around. There's no limited amount of privilege. Yeah, some people are privileged compared to others. How does that privilege detract from you? I think you guys mostly get that. I know we have people from all different shades of the political rainbow watching this show, which I appreciate. But I think you guys can all kind of get that privilege is this word that's taught. It's basically an ad hominem with citation. Like I can call you this. I can call you a name in a sense, but it works because look at all these other articles. Like I can cite. It's a citation, or it's an ad hominem with a pinkies up in a sense. Yeah. So join me in my privilege. It's great, and let's work on becoming ever more privileged together. The more privileged I am, the more privileged you are, and vice versa. Let's work on it together. So I was there for the birth of my kid, and it was a pretty interesting experience. A lot of blood, but what also made it interesting is earlier that week on Twitter, one of those Nature as Metal accounts, I saw the birth of a giraffe. The giraffe just kind of falls out of the mom. Like the mom barely even cares what's going on. The baby giraffe just kind of falls out of its mom. It takes maybe a minute or so to get its bearings, to get up on its legs and everything. But 5 minutes and it's ready to go. There is no initiation, but the birth of a human is completely different. It's born, 13, 14 months early? Because we have these huge heads and we wouldn't be able to fit these huge heads through the birth canal if we weren't born premature. So everybody's born premature, and isn't that what initiation is? You spring forth into a new realm, a new area of your life, and you're not ready. You look at an infant, their eyes aren't ready. Their hands aren't ready, their legs aren't ready, arms aren't ready, their lungs aren't ready. Like, it's difficult for them to breathe. Like, this freaking kid over here, like, gasping like that. I'm like, what's wrong with this thing? It's like, no, it's fine. They all do that. You can't breathe. They're breathing amniotic fluid. Very much like that great 1980s movie, The Abyss, right, where they have to breathe in that fluid so they can survive in the unconscious. I mean, tons of, obviously, rebirth symbolism there. Here, your eyes don't work. And you come out, you're this screaming, crying mess. You're not ready. No, mom and dad, I still want to spend 14, 13 months in the womb. Why are you making me go out before? Well, of course, the mom starts releasing hormones to in a sense, induce a birth. I mean, it's the same kind of hormones that they would give you to induce a birth prematurely. Like if there's a problem with the fetus or the baby and they need to get it out, you, in a sense, give the mother hormones that she would naturally produce on her own. Every birth is premature, and so you're pushed out in this world, and you simply have to adapt, and you can't adapt at first, right? You need people's help. You need people's help, and there's a lot of regression. There's a lot of going back into the mother. This is why you swaddle a kid. Pretty much everything you do to soothe a child, to soothe an infant, is mimic their life, their circumstances, their environment when they're in the womb. And so you have like a white noise maker, right? Because the womb is really loud. You swaddle them. They don't want to move their arms, like sucking at the breast or, sucking anything. These are all things they would do in a womb, all the way that a womb would soothe them, being attached to the mom, being rocked to sleep. This is all, it's just like, hey, okay, you try to be on your own, come back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it's no fun, but this is simply how you grow. And if you are stuck, it's because you are, in a sense, the infant in the womb saying, well, I'm not ready yet. Look, I'm looking at this rationally. I still have 13, 14 more months here. I don't have this one skill accomplished. I don't have this one thing I need to do before I get that other thing. Right? Like, oh, I can't go talk to girls, right? Because I'm still overweight. I still have 15 pounds to lose. Once I lose 15 pounds, you're, in a sense, the baby is saying, oh, look, I'm looking at this rationally. Right? I'm just being rational about it. I still have 13, 14 months left, not realizing that what you want to do to grow, to transform, to, in a sense, unlock ever more parts of your willpower, it's not going to make sense. It never makes sense. That's what makes these things archetypal. It doesn't make sense for a child to come out 14 months premature. But that's exactly what needs to happen for you to grow. Oh, well, that feels weird. Look, I don't have that capability. I can't do that. I can't have that job. I can't apply. Yeah, I can't apply for that job. I can't go to that school because, look, I just am unprepared. Let me read a few more books. Let me take a few more classes, and I'll be able to go. It doesn't work that way. That is what stagnation looks like. Stagnation is extremely reasonable. You look at somebody who's been stagnant for the past 10, God help you, 30 years. I've seen longer. They have great reasons. They're not sitting around beating themselves up. They're saying, well, look, I have this. Clearly. This is simply what I need to do to prepare to go on to the next stage. It's going to take forever. It is going to literally take forever. You will not get it done as long as you're in that mindset. What you need is some kind of induction of a hormone from the mother to, in a sense, burst you out from the veritable loins. You need something outside of you. Not necessarily something out. It can be something outside. It can also be something inside of you. You just get angry enough. In a sense, you just get angry enough at your situation, get angry enough at what your needs. This is what I'm in part trying to help you with here. Just see what growth looks like. You don't want to be the screaming poopy man. You don't want to crap all over yourself. Well, that's what needs to happen. Oh, well, look, if I initiate myself and I go here, I'm going to crap all over myself. Of course you are. That's what needs to happen. You're not going to have control over all your bowels because you never needed control over your bowels, proverbially, metaphorically, right, in the womb where you are. I don't want to look at all that blood. There's a lot of blood when there's a birth. Yeah, I can't believe it. So the birth went as smoothly as a birth could possibly go, and it was still pretty grotesque. That's how it is, right? That's exactly what it is. Your neurology, that's really where this metaphor is apt. The neurology is not adapted to the new environment. That's part of the reason why the kid screams all the time. Because, she just, any little fluctuation in temperature, she's not ready for it. It's, in a sense, a panic attack. That's what it is. It is a drug experience. It's a panic attack, both of which, of course, are initiatory experiences. Sometimes the drugs give you a panic attack. That's the point of them. That's what initiation is. It's an induced panic attack from the tribe. If you're in this indigenous African, perhaps South American tribe, that's what they do. They steal a 12-year-old boy from the hut. They think they are really going out to be killed. They're given drugs that they begin to freak out because, their perceptions start to change. You often hear, it's just insane how wrong everybody is about drugs. So on the one hand, you of course, there's the Sedona crowd saying, oh, you got to do mushrooms. Oh, marijuana helps you free your mind. And that's true to some extent, but that's not a replacement for really understanding how your psychology works. But on the other hand, you have people, perhaps maybe in the northern part of the Flagstaff. Yeah, there's the Sedona crowd and the Flagstaff crowd. You have the Flagstaff crowd saying, oh, drugs are always bad. Look, I got a buddy, and he took way too many mushrooms one time, and he had a panic attack, and his neurology has never recovered. He still has panic issues. Maybe he needs to be on some kind of antidepressant, SSRI, to help him with the panic now because he took too many mushrooms one time. Clearly, drugs are bad. It's like, no, that is what the initiation was. Your buddy took all the pain from the initiation, but none of the growth. He just went through the painful part, but never grew. He never adapted his neurology. That's the point of the panic attack, is realizing, well, now I seriously have to manage my anxiety. I have no choice. When I was in my womb, so to speak, the womb of my apartment, the womb of my previous stage of adult development, I could avoid my anxiety. I could do rationalizations. It was fine. It worked. And it could probably have worked for the next 40 years. But I had this inducement of hormones, we could say, outside of us. And I freaked out, and my neurology has never been the same. Exactly. It's not supposed to be the same. Your neurology is supposed to become so activated that you have no choice but to learn how to soothe yourself in a more, self-soothing kind of way. Manage the anxiety. Okay, now I need to manage the anxiety. Now I need to have these conversations that I was avoiding. I could avoid it for a long time. I'm the smart guy. I have all these clever rationalizations for it, but. So neither the pro-drug or anti-drug crowd is correct right now. They're all just a shade of the truth, very similar to our cultural divide. Neither side's correct. It's all kind of a shade of the truth, and it is correct from a certain perspective, but not every perspective. So, that's really the point of drugs. Right? The other thing with drugs I just got to mention is, are you using them to increase pleasure or decrease pain? Right, big difference. And I would say probably if you haven't been in therapy for a while, or I would say quality therapy, then you don't know how to distinguish those two. Most therapists don't understand that's a fundamental distinction we need to make, not only with drugs, but in anything what we want to do in our life. What's the intention? Are you doing it to decrease pain? Okay, I don't care what the decision is. I don't care how good it looks on the surface. It's probably going to lead you into a less than healthy direction. If you're doing it to increase pleasure, you're not running away from anything, then, it's going to end up bad for you. And also I'm thinking about initiation because I am reading the Count of Monte Cristo. I think I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. I always talk about Count of Monte Cristo. I've never read it. I tried to read it back in college, but it just didn't seem as good as the movie. Particularly I'm thinking of the 2000 version with, who's the guy who plays Ferdinand? It's not Ferdinand, it's Fernand. I always say, as I'm reading it, I see Fernand, but I always say Ferdinand. I don't know. Guy Pearce. Guy Pearce says Fernand. So I'm reading it. And of course, this is a story about initiation. At least a lot of it is so far. I'm only at a page like maybe 250, 260. But that was a good part of the movie that's not in the book. I want to talk about the book in a minute, but that was a good part in the movie that was not in the book is, well, in the book, Ferdinand and Edmund are not friends. They're rivals. More implicit rivals. They don't really know each other that well, but they both want to marry Mercedes. So that's similar to the movie. But in the movie, I think they did a really good shift of Fernand's character, and they made him Edmund's friend, or his seeming friend. And they made him an aristocrat. They're both poor in the book. They both start out poor, but in the movie, Guy Pearce is an aristocrat. And he has that really good line. Why is it that I envied you, Edmund? You had nothing, I had everything. But I still envy you. You still seem more comfortable in life. And this was the result of his jealousy. In a sense, you're doing things so you can be like Edmund, but it never works. Why? Why is it not working? It's the intention. Somebody else could be doing the same thing, and it could have really positive psychological consequences for him. But if you're doing it to avoid issues, If you're doing it to run away from something, to run away from some pain, and what exactly are you running away from? Yeah, psychological pain. You're not managing your issues directly. You're kind of running away from them, trying to cover them up. And you're going to find yourself, you do that for long enough, you're going to find yourself betraying your friend to get his girlfriend. Is it because you're a bad person? I don't know, maybe. And we can do a whole ethics course on whether that does make you a bad person or evil. But all I know is that when you avoid pain for long enough, you will do things and other people look at you and say, well, you're just a bad person, or you're evil. Are you? Are you just trying to manage emotions in an unhealthy way? Because right now you go to therapy and both therapists are standing at the forest. The one is saying, oh, don't go in, it's all rational. The other is saying, yeah, go in, but it is all rational, but you still got to go in. We're not going to make sense out of it, but you still got to go in. Neither of those are going to get you what you want. You got to make sense out of the forest. You need to make a map out of the forest. You need to, in a sense, systematize and unify the forest and show how that links to the prairie or Hogwarts. I guess that's a great symbol of the unconscious in the Harry Potter books and movies. So yeah, the purpose of a drug is to make you panic. Now you need to adapt. You're, in a sense, pushing yourself out of the womb before you're ready. You're giving yourself this psychological experience that you're not ready to handle. You don't even know what's going on. In fact, I imagine, I'm holding this kid and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, man, this is a drug experience that you're never going to have with any kind of thing that we call a drug. Just coming out in this world and seeing everything. You can't see things at first, but your eyes start to adjust and you can learn to focus on everything. I mean, this is a psychedelic experience. If we could all just remember back to our first week, our first month out of the womb, it would be the most psychedelic experience we would ever have. I don't care how much LSD you take. So yeah, this is all to say, Count of Monte Cristo is a sweet book. Another reason why I was thinking about initiation, a couple things in Count of Monte Cristo that I've noticed so far that really indicate the power of initiation or what's going on. I just want to tease out several aspects of it. The one is how invested the older generative generation is in you. They are more invested in you growing than you are in growing yourself. Mainly because they've already gone through the growth, they've already gone through the initiation, they know how important it is for a well-functioning psychological life, and just it's archetypal. Jung would argue, and I would agree, that we need to look back on the previous generation and help them out. It is the only antidote, I would argue. It's only way to manage the existential dread that comes from getting old. You're going to die. Your cartilage isn't getting any better, How do you manage that? You got to give it to the previous generation. And that's the Abbe Faria and Edmund when they're in Chateau d'If. Edmund kind of wants to grow, and Abbe Faria has all these books, and he's like looking at him, or not Dante is it? Dante is, and he's impressed. He's impressed by the Abbe, but he's not as invested in his own growth as the Abbe is. And you'd think, well, what's the Abbe's motivation? Why would he care so much? Dantes is just this guy we met randomly because he tunneled incorrectly, in the Chateau d'If. He went right when he should have gone left, outside to the drop into the sea. And because, that's just what's going on, And I think in the movie, and this line is not exactly in the book, but it is expressed in this way. When the Abbe is dying, he says to Edmund, Edmund says to the Abbe, he says, I don't believe in God. The Abbe says, God is watching over you, something with that accent. Edmund says, I don't believe in God. And what does the Abbe say? He says, well, it doesn't matter, because God believes in you. What's he saying here? He's saying there are these psychological processes in you. You don't have to believe that they're there. I'm pushing you out of the womb. You don't have to believe that it's going to be okay. It doesn't matter. But there's this process here that is bigger than you because of who you are as a human. Going back to the archetypal transformation that I mentioned in the video this past week. There's something here bigger than you, and you are not smarter than it. When you try to be smarter than it, you're just going to get rationalizations that are going to seem real to you. And it'll keep you stuck for 10, 20 years. You have to realize that there is this thing out there that believes in you. There's this process you are a part of. And it's going to happen. The choice isn't, oh, I don't want to partake in the process. It's either you avoid the process, which is about 10 units of pain, or you just let yourself go with it and accept it. You accept being birthed from the loins, and then it's only about 1 unit of pain. It's still painful. It's painful either way, but it's going to be way more painful if you simply resist it with your rationalizations. Yeah, God believes in you. There is this reality out there that is bigger than you that you are simply a part of, and simply to be a part of it and recognize you're a part of it and understand your role in it and create your own role from your own individuality, from your own identity that you create with your own decisions. That's what everything is about. And what happens there is Edmund lets himself be thrown off into the sea. Obviously getting thrown into the ocean, huge rebirth metaphor there. He's not ready, and he's got a weight attached to his life, right? All these things, but he's just going to need to figure it out. And he does. Of course he does. And very much, I think, like Don Gately in Infinite Jest, when he was going through his initiation phase, when he is hanging out at the Crocodile Club and they're taking him around to different AA meetings, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's just listening to what Ferocious Francis has to say and has to tell him. And he asks Ferocious Francis questions, and what does he say? He just gives him these responses that they're not direct, right? They're not answering Gately's questions specifically, but they are in a sense. They are in a sense saying, it's going to be fine. I know this seems scary right now. I know this seems strange. I know there's grammatical errors in the 12 steps, but you just have to stick to this process. You just have to ride around in the back of this car, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, listening to people, sitting up front. This is initiation. AA, 12-step groups, and I would say groups in general, are part of this initiation process. Or they're tools there to help us make the initiation easier. They're, in a sense, swaddling a baby. It's letting yourself be swaddled. You're in this new area and you don't want to go back because that's death, literally death. You can't go forward too much because you're not neurologically ready, so you end up in this process. And I'd imagine that Ferocious Francis, even though he seems kind of detached and aloof, he's more invested in Gately's sobriety than Gately is himself. Also, there's this really great part in Count of Monte Cristo. Well, I'll say this. When people are going through an initiation phase, what happens? There's a lot of grief. Because you look back and say, man, why did I spend 5 years in the womb? It could have been 5 months. So I spent 5 years in the womb. I came out and it was pretty much fine. I mean, it was uncomfortable. I cried. I crapped myself. But it was pretty much fine. And you start to have grief. Grief over lost time. Grief over all that regression, that 5 years of regression of you sitting in your room going, well, I could go talk to that girl, but her nose is kind of big. Once you go talking to the girl with the big nose and you realize, she's this great person, and even if you don't like her, even if she doesn't like you, it's a beneficial interaction that helps both of you. You realize, oh man, all those rationalizations that seem totally real, that seem as real as this iPhone is in front of me or this light is here, right? It seems that real. It was all BS. And then you feel this grief, this regret. Oh, I want to go back. We very much have those thoughts of, man, if I could only go back to when I was 19, I would do A, B, and C different. Of course, what do I say to that? It's like, that's a good indication of what you need to do different now. Now, you can't go back and do the exact things that you could have done differently when you were 19 because there's a different life environment, different life stage, different options for you. But do the equivalent now when you're 29 or 39. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is you have to see part of the initiations, part of working through the initiation is looking back at all the time of regression and saying, well, good thing I did. Good thing I did have that regression because now it means more to me. Now life is that much more important. Now every moment is that much more important. And there's this great part in Monte Cristo where Edmund is first meeting the Abbé. And the Abbé does all this crazy stuff. He does all this crazy MacGyver stuff so he can write, and he's teaching himself modern Greek because he knows ancient Greek. Now he's teaching himself modern Greek from that, and he figures out how to create ink from using soot from the fireplace and mixes it with the wine. He figures out how to treat the clothes that they give the prisoners to make it soft like parchment so he can write on it. And he's basically writing these books. And Edmund looks at him and he says, man, you're so, all this ingenuity here. Imagine what you could have done if you never were arrested, if you never had to spend all this time in the Chateau d'If. Imagine what you could have done for society, for yourself. Of course, what does the Abbé say? Edmund is in a sense giving the Abbé a payoff. He's like saying, look, you got to feel sorry for yourself. I want you to look back on your life, because this is where Edmund is in the initiation process, and it's fine. He's still adapting his neurology to the new environment. But of course, what does the Abbé say? He says, no, it's a good thing this happened. Because I wouldn't have done this. I would have never had the wherewithal. I would have never had the focus. I would have never needed the intention to adapt to my environment like I have if I'm in a cell. Now that I'm in a cell, everything means more. I take that much focus. I put that much more focus onto adapting to this environment, which it never would have happened if I wasn't arrested and put in the Chateau d'If. It's like saying, man, I wish I wouldn't have smoked so much pot or had so many mushrooms, and I wouldn't have had all these, neurological attacks. Well, no, it's a good thing you did. It's a good thing you did, because now you are given the opportunity. You realize what a gift that is. You're given an opportunity to adapt to your new surroundings, an opportunity that you never would have had before if you never did drugs and quote the correct way. Okay? I mean, it's just like the baby saying, oh man, I wish I would have spent 14 months. 14 more months in the womb. No, that would have been terrible. Because, for the same exact reason why you need to be birthed early, this huge head. You need this initiatory experience so you can develop psychologically. Right? It's like a chicken or egg thing. What came first? Well, they both came at the same time, right? It's never one or the other. Now you're given the opportunity to soothe yourself. As an infant, as Edmond Dantes in the Chateau d'If, it doesn't matter. You're given the opportunity to soothe yourself, and with this knowledge you can go on not only to soothe yourself, but use it for other more important, perhaps, things in the future. I think something else that needs to happen, or something else I was thinking about when it comes to initiation, is separation from our father that is the American government, that is America, that is this whatever idea that we were ingrained with. If anybody's old enough in the 90s, that I guess that was the last of it, where America is this great, beautiful thing. We need to separate from that. And I think I see a lot of people on Twitter, from both the left and the right. This is why I think it's important to talk about it, indicative of a psychological issue. And I know you get criticism. I got it on a video a couple of weeks ago saying that I think everything is a father issue. Not everything is a father issue. Nobody's saying that. But if you look at how you relate to, let's say, I think it was hedge fund managers or the American government, and how you relate to these things is very similar to how you relate with or relate improperly with your father, then boy, that could be an indication. There's a lot of overlap here. A lot of similar emotions come up between hedge funds and your father, or the American government and your father. Boy, that's an indication. Still doesn't mean that it's about your father. Okay. But then, when you start to communicate with your father differently, when you create a better relationship with him, is your father going to change? No, that doesn't matter. But when you start to create a better relationship with your father, and then that changes your relationship with either the government or hedge fund managers, now we need to question, was this just a projection of unconscious issues that you had about your father? Doesn't mean everything is. But boy, you have to wonder. And I'm not even saying it definitely is, but I just want you guys to think about your life in a little bit different, hopefully a more deeper way to give you self-awareness so you can go on and manage these issues for yourself. And there's something going on right now. I guess it's been going on for a while where people say, look at everything the American government's doing. And again, this is left and right. I'm not picking sides. I think you guys are both wrong. You're both wrong. You come at it from a poor epistemological framework. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, I have 120 pages of philosophy notes available at animusempire.com, $3. You don't want 120 pages of philosophy notes for $3? Okay. If that's the case, then you're listening to the wrong podcast. But people from the left and right both get on Twitter and they say, man, look at everything that the elites are doing. Look at everything that they're doing. There is no way that they are not purposely trying to hurt us. The only way that we can explain what elites are doing is they are purposely trying to hurt us. You can't explain it any other way. Maybe. But what's interesting is that when somebody has a father issue, a mother issue, a parental issue, and they're resentful, or they don't know how to manage that resentment, because they simply don't know how to manage their emotions in general, right? Maybe they're standing at the edge of the forest, or they go into the forest and nobody gives them a map. They say the same exact thing. Look back to what my dad did when I was 5. He must be evil. There's no way somebody would have done that to me unless they were trying to hurt me purposely. But of course, what happens? That you birth from your mother's loins, you birth from your father's, veritable loins, and you go into the next stage of development, and you look back, and in training your neurology to be in the new environment, you look back on what your father did to you when you were 5 and realize, he wasn't trying to hurt me. That wasn't the point. It seemed like that. It seemed like that from my deficient, attached to my father perspective. But now I can look back and realize my dad had issues that he could not manage on his own. He didn't know how to manage on his own. And so what appeared to be hurting me, and what did hurt me, we can acknowledge that when you were 5, he hurt you. Let's call it what it is. Not for the purpose of being resentful, but just for the purpose of awareness and hopefully creating the best relationship possible you can with your father now. But he wasn't trying to hurt me. He just had his own issues. And when somebody has their own issues to work on, they invariably do things that hurt other people. This is what narcissism is. This is what borderline is. You're not trying to hurt people, but that's what ends up happening because you have your own issues that you can't focus. And of course, the paradox of it is when you are in that previous stage of initiation, you don't manage your issues, and you're going around saying, man, my father, or my government, or these hedge fund guys, there's no way they're not purposely trying to hurt me. You are, in fact, hurting other people in your life that way. Maybe not to the same extent, but I know for sure that you are. And just like the baby needs to develop his own resources when he comes from the womb, this is what we need to do, not to push America in any kind of direction, but if we want more rational discourse, we need to develop our own resources so we can separate from the American government or whatever society you're in, so you can be more detached and look at it from a healthier perspective. And and I'll leave it there. Oh no, wait, I'm not going to leave it there. I'm going to do one more thing. I had a reading here. Yeah, I still got some time. I have a reading here. I have a paragraph from, this is volume 9.1, Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. I think that's a mistranslation. It's really Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. This is paragraph 453. Let me get to it here. This paragraph is about using what we think, or how we think the government is hurting us, using our own projection of that to separate from the government. So we think the government is hurting us, let's say, because we haven't separated from the government, we haven't separated from authority in a healthy way, as symbolized and perhaps as a result of not separating from our fathers in a healthy way. So what we need to do, in a sense, and this is from the essay, The Phenomenology of the Spirit in Fairy Tales. Page 251, I don't know if that matters, but just the regular version that you probably get. It's page 251, but more importantly, importantly, paragraph 453. But it's about using that darkness that we project on the government. We need to recognize that darkness is our own, and we need to employ it to separate from the government in a healthy way, to separate from our Father in a healthy way, right? When we project our own darkness onto him, say, no, he was trying to hurt us. No, take that back, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that warrior spirit. You're going to need that anger to push through the anxiety of separation. That is, in a sense, the inducement of labor. Anger changes your physiology. It changes your hormones all around. That is an inducement of labor for sure. Okay, so paragraph 453. As in alchemy, our fairy tale describes the unconscious processes that compensate the conscious. The conscious Christian situation. It depicts the workings of the spirit who carries our Christian thinking beyond the boundaries set by ecclesiastical concepts, seeking an answer to questions which neither the Middle Ages nor the present day have been able to solve. So do you see what he's saying here? We're in this certain framework of Christian thought, which is fine, Let's work on our Christianity. Let's not get rid of it. Let's work on it. Let's expand it. Let's amplify on it. But it is limited, and we need to grow beyond it. Like, we need to grow beyond our current attachment to the American government, for instance. But there is symbolism of what we need to grow beyond Christianity, what we need to grow beyond our parents and the American government. There is this kind of symbolism in fairy tale. Which one is he talking about here? Oh, he's talking about Wotan, which is the German version of Odin, in a sense. Oh yeah, so he's talking about Wotanism and how this kind of spirit, this ideological spirit, grappled the German around World War II. Yeah, I think so. This was written in, I think, 1945. So this is right after World War II. The spirit of Wotanism grappled the German psyche, not because there's anything wrong with this warrior spirit, this anger, so to speak, but they didn't recognize it. And Hitler, the Nazi movement, the National Socialist movement became their projection of it. Obviously we see that. I'm not calling Trump a Nazi. He's definitely not a Nazi. He's not fascist in any way. But this is true for both Trump and Biden, or any political leader, right? We take our anger and we project it onto them, or the other side, and we want to hurt the other side, when really it's our own needs that we need to get met. We don't see ourselves as capable of getting those needs met, so we look at the government, whether it's Biden or Trump or anybody, we say, we'll get our needs met. Create society in a way that I want it to be created. So, where was I? So, let me just read that last sentence again. It depicts the workings of a spirit who carries, interesting, he refers to the spirit as who? The spirit who carries our Christian thinking beyond the boundaries set by ecclesiastical concepts, seeking an answer to questions which neither the Middle Ages nor the present day have been able to solve. It is not difficult to see in the image of the second royal pair a correspondence to the ecclesiastical conception of bridegroom and bride, and in that of the hunter and witch a distortion of it. So we're looking at the bridegroom and the bride as represented as this nice thing, but then there's the dark side of the hunter and the witch, veering towards atavistic unconscious Wotanism. That's what I just mentioned. The fact that it is a German fairy tale makes the position particularly interesting, since the same Wotanism was the psychological godfather of National Socialism, which should really say unconscious Wotanism, was the psychological godfather of National Socialism, a phenomenon that carried the distortion to the lowest pitch before the eyes of the world. On the other hand, the fairy tale makes it clear that it is possible for a man to attain totality, to become whole only with the cooperation of the spirit of darkness. Indeed, that the latter is actually a causa instrumentalis, an instrument cause. Good thing I took those 4 years of Latin. Instrument cause of redemption and individuation. What was he saying there? We needed this dark side. We need this anger, in a sense. He's not saying anger. I'm saying anger. We need this anger, in a sense. It's not that just acknowledging it, we use it in a healthy way, but it is an instrument cause, right? It's not the final cause, but it is an instrumental cause of redemption and individuation. So what's he saying there in that past tense? Integrate your freaking anger so you can individuate. So you can birth from your mother's loins, metaphorically, and go on to individuate. In utter perversion of this goal of spiritual development, to which all nature aspires, and which is also prefigured in Christian doctrine. Right? What's he saying? That this initiation, the spiritual development, it's in us. Like I was just saying maybe 15 minutes ago. It's not, I don't want any part of it. It's, I'm either going to fight it, taking 10 units of pain, or I'm going to allow myself to go with it, only take 1 unit of pain. Okay, so let me read that sentence again. In utter perversion of this goal of spiritual development, to which all nature aspires, and which also prefigured in Christian doctrine, National Socialism destroyed man's moral autonomy and set up the nonsensical totalitarianism of the state. The fairy tale tells us how to proceed if we want to overcome the power of darkness. What do? We must turn his own weapon against him, the darkness's own weapon against him. The National Socialists, the communists, whatever totalitarian government, we need to turn their own weapon against him, which naturally cannot be done if the magical underworld of the hunter remains unconscious. If we go up to the edge of the forest and we say, it doesn't matter, it's not important, that's all irrational, or we go up to the edge of the forest and say, well, there's really nothing, we don't really know what we're doing here. There's really no map here, but I think it just feels right that you got to go in. You can't do that. Why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? Because the fairy tale makes it clear that it is possible for man to attain totality, to become whole only with the cooperation of the spirit of darkness. Only indeed that the latter is an actual causal instrumentalis of redemption and individuation. That's why. Because it's only part of the cause. It's only this tool that we use. It's only an instrumental in our becoming whole and individuated. Same thing. Okay, so the fairy tale tells us how to proceed. I'm going to do an annoying thing and just read this again. The fairy tale tells us how to proceed if we want to overcome the power of darkness. We must turn his own weapon against him, which naturally cannot be done if the magical underworld of the hunter remains unconscious, and if the best men in the nation would rather preach dogmatisms and platitudes than take the human psyche seriously. And I will leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. Please, or listening on Spotify, please like and subscribe. AnimusEmpire.com/schedule free consultations. And of course, I wish you all the joy and pain that comes from initiation.